Manna. So we knew that we needed to get this space back open, and so we're glad that you can join us virtually here today. This is a virtual potluck because we always hold breaking bread over a meal. So please feel free to enjoy your lunch. I've got my fruit here that I'll just munch on a little bit every now and then. So feel free to enjoy that. And I also want to let you know that we are recording today. We want to be able to share this with people who couldn't make it. We hope that won't inhibit anyone from sharing, but that instead it will allow good ideas and solutions to be shared broadly. So we typically start our breaking bread with new and good. It is a way of us introducing ourselves and a way for us to get to know the people that we're sharing the space with. So we just ask that you share something with us that is both new and good in your lives. And we have a lot of folks, so we may not be able to hear from everybody, but if you would type your new and good response in the chat, I'll be able to read some of them, and we'll call on a couple of people to share something out loud as well. And I'm happy to start, so I can give you a minute to think about it and start sharing in the chat.
Angie, may I just make one technological suggestion?
Sure.
So folks who are new to Zoom may not know that in most versions, in the top right corner, you can choose what view. And so you can do like the Holiday Squares or Brady Bunch model, which is called the gallery view, or you can do speaker view, and then whoever's talking, it has the biggest screen, but you see some others. And so we might want, do what is your preference, but you might want to toggle and see how that works.
All right.
So back to you, Angie.
Thank you. So I'll share that about, I think it was 2 Sundays ago, I had a really great experience at home. I was sitting in my living room and heard all of this noise outside, and went out to see what was going on. And there was a kind of a driving Black Lives Matter demonstration going down my block. And they were honking their horns, and we saw posters in their windows, names like George Floyd and Tamir Rice, and we didn't know if they were honking because we had a Black Lives Matter flag out front, or if they were honking their horns the whole way, but it didn't matter. It was just really awesome to see that happening. A great way to get your voice heard and social distance at the same time. So that's my new and good. Is there anybody who particularly would want to share theirs live? Let's see. Elizabeth shared something on the chat. Elizabeth, would you like to share that? Unmute yourself and share that with us.
Sure. Yeah, I just, new and good in my life is that I just yesterday signed up to add food delivery to the volunteer roles that I play at Manna. So I'm very excited about that. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. We're glad to have you. My buddy Andrea shared something. Would you be willing to?
Yeah, so this is totally selfish, but it's good for me personally. We've had a side porch for 20 years that was finally fixed, and I hit the button and purchased furniture to go on there so that I can sit and read, and I'm so excited about it.
Sounds good. And Ed, I can't see the full name here, so I just see first names. Ed, would you be willing to share with us what you just posted?
Yeah, thank you. Ed Choi, Senior Pastor, Restoration Church. We started a study a few weeks ago that on every other Sunday night throughout the summer on racial reconciliation and justice and those issues. We have a very ethnically diverse, culturally diverse church in Gaithersburg. It's been so fun. I don't know if fun's the right word, but it's been so meaningful to have an exchange with people who have different views. And I think that's so healthy. I'm so grateful to be a part of that conversation. And unfortunately, so much of the conversation is, it's so vitriolic to the other, whatever the other views might be. So we're having a great time. It's not easy, but it's been really a blast. And my 17th week growing my beard. Every week I don't shave, I give toward Manna. So you guys are in my hearts every week.
Thanks for sharing that. Sounds great. Elizabeth, did you raise your hand again on purpose? Can't. I see hands up, so I'm not sure. No. Okay.
No, I
let's
was
see.
just using that little clap icon. So
Oh, is that the clap? Okay. They look the same to me, waving and, okay, great. Let's see, and then my colleague Wynn also posted something. Would you like to share that, Wynn?
That was me, Isaac. I just finished my first semester back at school yesterday, so very excited about that. 1 down, 7 more to go.
It's great news. Congratulations. All right. Anybody, can we get one more person to share? Is there anybody else who would be willing to share? New and good. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you for sharing those really great pieces of your life with us. We appreciate it. Since we have a lot of new faces, I want to tell you a little bit about Breaking Bread and what we do. We've been holding Breaking Bread sessions in a couple of different ways for probably 3 years or maybe even a little bit longer. The idea was generated by our CEO, Jackie, and one of our good friends, Jeff Miller, who was a former board chair and has been a great supporter of Manna over the years. And they came up with this really great idea as a way for us to address the root causes of food insecurity, basically. Breaking bread is something that we do when we get together because we know the power of food in each of our lives. And we know the power of food to bring us together across lines of difference. Sort of the premise of Breaking Bread is that solutions begin with conversations. And we've been seeking new strategies to end food insecurity in our community that go beyond the food assistance that we provide at Manna. We know that that assistance is critical to people, but we also know that it isn't the whole solution. And so we ask, what is it that we as individuals or in small groups of people can do to address the root causes of food insecurity? And that's why we gather. We started with our staff and we held sessions with our staff, getting to know each other in new ways and learning how to ask challenging questions and talking to each other over the lines of difference in our own staff. And then we expanded to include our program participants because that voice is the most critical voice for us to have involved in this conversation of solutions. And so our staff and community members have met with program participants to start generating these conversations and ideas. What can we do to make a change in our community beyond the work that we do every day? And then we started this monthly gathering as a way for all of those folks to come back together and continue the conversation so that we always have a space to encourage each other, to say, I've got this idea, and then to get some support on continuing to follow through on those ideas. And so here's my moment for a spoiler alert. When we get to the end of the meeting, we are going to ask if anybody wants to make a commitment that they would share with us of something that they would be willing to explore over the next 30 days until we meet again, to help create new solutions or explore the underlying causes of hunger and food insecurity in our county. So keep that in mind as you listen to the conversation, and start thinking about, where is my passion in this conversation? What is it that I can bring that could make a difference in food security? So I don't know if anybody who's on the line has any update on a commitment that they've made previously, and so many months have passed that that they may not, but I'll just create the space for a moment to see if anybody does have an update on a previous commitment that they'd like to share right now.
So Isaac and I both have updates on ours. My commitment last Breaking Bread was to learn more about, I've been living in DC, so kind of the area around me, the history behind it, because it's such a diverse and interesting place. So I've been reading Chocolate City, which is a great book. And then I also live in Columbia Heights, and they have around DC, they have different they're called heritage trails, where you can walk around the neighborhood and read different signs about the history of the community. So I went and did that a couple weeks ago and learned more about the civil rights movement within Columbia Heights, and the history of housing discrimination, and just the really diverse community that I lived in. So that was a really great experience.
Yeah, I think the last Breaking Bread I attended was one I led, and it was about soul food and the connection to kind of tradition, but also where it comes from out of food insecurity. And one of my commitments was to try different cultures' foods, and also to be more conscious about the food that I ate. So I'm definitely working on getting more plant-based meals into my diet, cutting out a lot of red meat, just being more conscious.
Great, thank you both. I appreciate that. Anybody else have an update that they'd like to share?
I can share. Also, how smart was Isaac at picking a commitment that was as fun as just trying different cultural foods? I'm going to take a note when we get to the commitment portion of today's call. I have had the luxury of being a part of Breaking Bread for a long time, so I've made so many different commitments. So I'm just going to cherry pick one to talk about, which is talking to my family more about, I think this was mainly around the 2016 era of Breaking Bread, when I was talking to my family a little bit about the upcoming election, and making a commitment to continue to have the kinds of conversations that Pastor Ed mentioned, that are difficult and made maybe especially difficult because they are with people you have familial relationships with. So I had a good conversation with my father a couple of weeks ago about police brutality, and another conversation with a cousin of mine when I went home to Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago. So trying to keep those going, and I guess I'll keep that commitment for later on as well. So continuing those kinds of conversations outside of these kinds of conversations.
Thank you. All right, one last call for updates. All right, well, I appreciate everybody sharing your new and good and your updates. I'm gonna go over to Andrea's house and sit on her porch and read a book with her when, maybe I'll do it now and wear my mask. Jackie, turning it back to you.
Thanks so much, Angie. And I want to just add to your history of breaking bread that you've been a real co-creator in this, because you've helped us be constant month over month. And sometimes it's just us staff people, and then but we always have good food when it's our staff people and our teammates. And then sometimes we have a good overwhelming response like this. So it's really wonderful that one of the silver linings of being more physically distant is people have more opportunity to be online. So thanks to everybody. I want to extend the welcome that Angie did to this. I've been thinking a lot about, and those of you who read our newsletter or hang out with us as volunteers, this phrase that one of our volunteers, Deanna, said that volunteering has really opened her eyes. And she says that, you know, people talk about going back to normal, but normal wasn't working. We know at Manna that all people at all times have deserve to have access to good food and welcoming spaces. But unfortunately, even before the pandemic, that wasn't happening. And we know, as Angie said, that we offer a good service, but that's not enough. We have to address the root causes. But in this unique moment, I've been wondering, like, okay, well, what does a new normal, what does a fairer, more equitable normal look like? And I've started talking to people in the faith community. And not because Manna is a faith-based organization. We're not. We're secular. We serve people of faith or of no faith at all. But our roots are in the faith community. Many of us are people of faith, but we owe our start to congregations. I was looking at the list of about 25 congregations back in 1982, and it was everything from People's Community Baptist Church to coalitions like Community Ministries of Montgomery County, what was called then, now Andrea's group, Community Reach. So I thought, since it was my turn to facilitate, I would turn to some really respected leaders in the faith community, but also a respected leader here at Manna, to ask them what their COVID response has been in their congregations, and then, or their organizations, and then what they've learned, what they're inspired to do, and try to help us, as Angie said, create some solutions. So we have three folks that are going to kind of share with us for 5 minutes. I'm a former school teacher, so I'm kind of a taskmaster. I will keep you to those 5 minutes, not because I want to be rude, but because we want to have a good dialogue. And then we'll open it up to dialogue and question. But so I'm really very, very honored that Rabbi Adam Raskin is going to go first. I first heard Adam Raskin preach at his congregation, Har Shalom, because they were hosting an interfaith Thanksgiving service in 2016. And it was the first time. Thanksgiving is a very important holiday for Manna, you might expect. And I was really very, very touched by his teaching and his wisdom, and also by the fact that his congregation is kind of a comprehensive partner. We always talk about we need food, and we need funds, and we need friends. And Rabbi Raskin's congregation offers all of those and has for many years. A new friend has been Reverend Kendra Smith of Kingdom Fellowship AME, whose building is just less than a mile from our new home in Silver Spring. And Reverend Kendra, her title is Go Lead. And when I saw that, I was like, that is perfect for Kendra, because she is always on the go. She hears a good idea and she goes with it. And she also leads people and says, come if you want to come with me, but I'm going. And so it's really great to have Reverend Kendra here. And then Jenna Umbriac, who is our Director of Program and Policies, who in an early Breaking Bread, when it was just a private group at Manna, told a story about the fire and the passion that she brings for social justice, and it was all about root causes. And I've been privileged alongside Angie to work with Jenna for 7 years and serve with Jenna, and so I know she has a lot to bring to the discussion as well. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Adam to unmute himself and turn on his camera, and we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Jackie. This is my first Breaking Bread, and I'm honored and thrilled to be here with you. I hope I understood the directions correctly, but I'll do my best. I was just at Manna yesterday, actually, with a group of high school and college students packaging smart sacks, and one of those students was my own 19-year-old daughter, who turned to me just kind of in the assembly line and said, Abba, that's the Hebrew word, that's what she calls me, that's the Hebrew word for dad. She said, Abba, is this a Jewish organization? Just kind of light bulb went on. And I said, well, no, just like what Jackie just said, it's non-sectarian, it doesn't have a specific religious affiliation. But as we kind of continue to pack sacks, it occurred to me, it is kind of a Jewish organization, if not in stated purpose, because number one, obviously the name comes from the Hebrew Bible, which is wonderful, but also what Manna stands for, what Manna's mission is, what Manna does every day is very much, very close to the heart and soul and value system of the Jewish people and the Jewish Bible. So just a few words about that. In the Jewish lexicon, the idea of charity is not from the Latin kind of origins of caritas and love and emotion and voluntarism. But in Judaism, the concept of charity is referred to as tzedakah, which is perhaps a word that some of you have heard. Tzedakah comes from the roots in Hebrew that actually means justice. So the idea of feeding and caring for the poor, for the hungry, for those on the margins of society it might be a matter of love, might be a matter of compassion, might emerge from a space of emotion and compassion. But at the end of the day, whether you feel like it or not, right, whether you're moved to do it or your emotions speak to it or not, it is ultimately a matter of justice. And it is fundamental to what we understand to be the divine contract with humanity. There's a beautiful statement in rabbinic literature in the Talmud that says that tzedakah, this act of justice provided to those who are in need, doing that is equal to all of the other commandments combined, which is quite a remarkable statement, because there are 613 commandments enumerated in the Hebrew Bible. Doing the act of justice, tzedakah, is understood to be equal to all of them combined. That really undergirds, I think, the Jewish community's commitment to hunger, to other issues of justice in society. It's fundamental to our relationship with God and our relationship with other human beings. There is a beautiful statement, a first century sage who said in a collection of kind of pithy wisdom statements in Jewish tradition, give to him of that which is his for you, and that which is yours is his. In other words, everything that you own, everything that, so to speak, belongs to you, really fundamentally belongs to God. And we human beings are in the distribution business, right? We are in the business of distributing what has been given to us by God to those who need it. Nothing really ultimately belongs to us. We are the distributors, we are the wholesalers, we're in the shipping business, right? We are in the delivery business of the wealth and the largesse that some of us have been benefited to have. I think one of the most challenging statements for me theologically, and I'd love to know what the other pastors on the call have to say about it, is a line in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 11, which says to us that there will always be needy among us. There will always be needy among us. I wrestle with that, I struggle with that, honestly, friends, because I don't know why the world has to be like that. I don't know why the world has to be built with that assumption and with that expectation. But what it does say to me, and what I think it says to members of my community is, well, if the world has to be like that, and we can't kind of untangle the knot of why that has to be, but in the meantime, if the world has to be like that, then our job, our responsibility is to make sure that whenever we encounter the needy, whenever we encounter the hungry, whenever we encounter the poor, that we have to take up their mantle, and we have to see to it that we provide for them and help them and lift them out of their circumstances as much as we are able to do. Another part of Deuteronomy says, when you encounter someone who is destitute, who is poor, who is hungry, you shouldn't harden your heart or shut your hand. Rather, you have to open your hand to them. So certainly during this COVID pandemic, we have been inspired by Manna's work. Whether food collections outside of our synagogue, we've brought bins of food over to the 24/7 drop box in front of the Manna facility in Gaithersburg, to our congregation taking on we just recently took on a Tuesday weekly commitment to be at Manna every Tuesday to help pack smart sacks throughout the summer. And I'll just leave you with one final thing. I don't know what the clock says. I know my congregants say that no rabbi in the history of the world has ever been able to say something in 5 minutes or less. So I don't know what I'm looking at here, but I'll just say one quick thing, which is there's a beautiful midrash, which is like a rabbinic homily, which says the following: when you're asked in the world to come, what was your occupation? What was your work? What did you do with your life? And when you answer, I fed the hungry, you will be told, this is the gateway of the Lord. Enter into it, you who have fed the hungry. So again, whether we're talking about this aspect of justice being equal to all of the other commandments combined, or we're talking about really the entryway to eternity being first and foremost for those who occupied themselves with feeding the hungry, I think we see that from the point of view of our tradition, there's really nothing holier, nothing more socially responsible, nothing more that speaks to our contract with our fellow human beings and the expectation that God has from us than feeding and caring for those who need us the most.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, for that inspiration and that's the storytelling about your own connection, your own family, and you can tell your congregation. You made it in 6 minutes, which is pretty good. We will now turn to Reverend Kendra Smith. You want to unmute yourself, or I can help you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Hello, and thank you, Jackie and Jenna and Manna, for the invitation. We are very excited about being here today and participating in, I love the name, Breaking Bread, which also speaks to our faith tradition as well. Kingdom Fellowship AME Church, our senior pastor is Reverend Matthew Watley. I believe we have some Kingdom Fellowship folks on the line, so thank you guys for joining. I don't have enough time to talk about our history, but if anyone knows the African Methodist Episcopal Church, we were born out of racial discrimination. So in 1787, Richard Allen and Absalom Jones were meeting in St. George's Church, and they were pulled, them and others were pulled up off of their knees because they were praying, but they weren't praying in the Black section. And so they decided at that point, basically, enough was enough. And they left, and they started what became known as the Free African Society. And from that one decision of protest, the AME Church now has members in 20, what we call Episcopal districts, 39 countries, in 5 continents. And we are, as a church, committed to meeting the holistic needs of people. So that's spiritual, mental, physical needs of people. So when we talk about our faith and we talk about the pandemic and we talk about this need of food, this very much is a part of who we are as a church. Kingdom Fellowship specifically, our mission is to develop kingdom-focused disciples who share the love of Jesus with the world. So in our name is this concept of kingdom, that the kingdom of God is at hand. And so as followers of Christ, we believe that it is just. Thank you so much, Rabbi. Those were phenomenal, thought-provoking comments. Thank you so much. I was shaking my head saying, yes, yes, because providing food, which some may just call an act of charity, is just. Because it is not just to know that you have the power to do something and you have the resources to do something, but you don't. And so there's so many stories in the biblical narrative that speak to the power of food, but one of the stories in the New Testament that speaks to the power of food and helps frame what kingdom is doing is when Jesus feeds the 5,000. And so that story is in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but the one that pulls at me right now is in John. So in the Gospel of John, it's seen as a sign, right? That Jesus Christ is the Messiah. And so Jesus sees all of these multitudes of people that are coming. And he, the text says 5,000, but that was just the men, didn't count the women and the children. So we believe that there were many more that were there. He sees all of these people that are coming. And so he turns to his disciple and asks him a question. And right now, Kingdom is in this teaching series with our pastor called Question Everything. And it talks about how the need to ask a question really helps you to think about where your priorities are. And so he asked the question to Philip, where are we going to find enough food to feed all these people? Now, mind you, Jesus already knew in his mind, according to the text, what he was going to do. But literally, he asked the question, and if I could just read it for you, he says, when he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, where are we to buy bread for these people to eat? He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Again now, he says, but what are they among so many people? Jesus said, make the people sit down. Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, gather up the fragments left over so that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. I love this story because you start with a sense of scarcity. So they're saying, we don't have enough money, nor does it appear that we have enough food. We only have 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But then as the text continues to go, they move from scarcity to satisfaction. Jesus says, okay, let me take that. Ask everybody, sit down on the grass. And for me, the grass is symbolic, again, of peace, of pasture, of abundance, because this text is also about abundance. It's about God's abundance. God is a God of abundance. He's not a God of lack. And so with that, they all sit down. In this particular story, Jesus feeds. In other aspects of this story, in other gospels, the disciples are feeding. But now Jesus breaks the bread, he thanks, and then he feeds all the people. And it literally says they ate as much as they wanted until they were all satisfied. So now you move from scarcity to now satisfaction, sufficiency. And then it goes on to say that not only did everyone eat as much as they wanted, but then it goes on to say that there was some left over. So now you also have now surplus. And he says, don't just throw away what you have left over, but I want you to gather everything that you have left over so that nothing may be lost. And this is such a great picture for me of what we're doing now, even in this sense of pandemic. Or some are feeling that there's such a sense of scarcity, that there's not enough. But for us, we all do what we can do. So Jackie T said, yeah, you know, Kendra goes, she goes, but we can't make an excuse that we don't have enough. We all have to start with where we are. And in the Christian faith, in our tradition, we believe we can't do anything without God. God is so much so, as you said, Rabbi, without him, we would have nothing. And he is the giver of all. And so if we just begin where we are, I know Kingdom, we started out with just, you know, I think giving out a few boxes back in March, right? We were working with Prince George's County Public Schools. I'm almost at the end. What's my time? I'm done.
You're done.
Uh-oh, okay. So you get my point. So the point is that we, I'm with the rabbi, never give a preacher a mic, but the point is, and I really wanted to share that story, is that when we are in the presence of God, God can take what appears to be scarce and he can move it to sufficiency. He can move it to surplus. And we're just glad to be working alongside you all. And our hope is that we would continue to partner. We would continue to serve. We would continue to do what we can with the resources we have to feed all those who are in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Folks, I'm getting some messages that my audio is not clear, and I apologize. I'm working on that, but you really don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from Jenna. So Jenna, take it away.
Thank you for recognizing that, Jackie. Thank you very much. And thank you to Rabbi Adam and Reverend Kendra for your words. I think we can start where we all agree, which is that the last few months have been really challenging. It's been hard to be away from friends and family. It's been scary to worry about the health of ourselves and others. And washing hands so many times a day really makes them dry. Personally, the hardest times actually made me doubt my purpose here at Manna, and I've been here for 9 years, nearly. You see, since I began leading the programs team about 7 years ago, my team's work has been forward-thinking and systems-focused. We create educational programming to provide the tools to promote community health and greater self-sufficiency. We led the shift in food distribution from a pre-packed model to the Manna market model that allows for full choice so that our participants can have agency and maintain dignity while getting assistance. When the pandemic hit, almost overnight, our work had to change. Our team and others at Manna were forced to pivot, and our focus as an organization became much more myopic. Program managers and coordinators quickly transitioned to our call center in an attempt to relieve pressure on the volunteers and the participant support staff who were handling a 40% increase in the number of calls. Instead of designing lesson plans and cooking demonstrations, we designed safety protocols and all the signs needed to remind people to wear masks and stay 6 feet apart and sanitize their hands. Community Food Rescue, which is a program we have based upon the concept of reduction of food waste, had really less purpose at a time when grocery stores couldn't even keep enough food on the shelves for their own customers. So we used its infrastructure to leverage volunteer support and make home deliveries to the most at-risk community members. And to date, we've actually kept over 800 neighbors well-fed and in the safety of their homes. Although this is an extremely useful service, now our program meeting agendas are all about troubleshooting with no time for brainstorming. Our weekend bag program was quickly expanded from 3,000 bags a week to 7,000. We stopped asking how we might change this program to serve people better, and our main question every day became how we'd find the food to just serve more. I hear this question, this last one about serving more and where do we find the food, on the daily litany of virtual calls that have really now formed the shape of my days. Manna's answer has been to share bulk purchasing power and storage space with other providers, and I'm very proud of this. But these calls always leave me somewhat disheartened. I used to co-chair the precursor to these groups. I probably still co-chair it when we get back to actually having those meetings, called the Food Recovery and Access Working Group. And those gatherings used to be about how we could standardize our practices and how we could reduce duplication and how we could collaborate better. And the conversations now have really felt less collaborative to me as we each began operating under the premise that the need is so great that each of us needs to be everywhere all the time. This time, though, has not been without opportunity to shift systems. I'm most proud of the ways that Manna has continued to address the root causes of food insecurity, even during COVID. An issue that the pandemic has cultivated, but one that has its roots in centuries of racial inequities and cycles of poverty. We've increased our SNAP application assistance to afford more people the funds to purchase their own food. We advocated for and are going to receive county funding to increase investments in local food producers, which is a strategy that, if sustained, could create a more resilient food system so that we're better able to handle the next pandemic, and one that has the potential to make a food system that ensures food security well into the future. One goal along Manna's path from charity to justice has been to break down the unjust power dynamics between recipient and provider. Mm-hmm. Food distributions that focus on volume and expediency unfortunately leave little space and time for relationship building. In these types of mass distributions, people remain the hungry, the poor, the other. That said, Manna has had occasions for new strategic partnerships that affect some of the most disenfranchised communities at this time. Among them, the Ethiopian Community Center, that we work with on the creation of a voucher program that invests money in local Ethiopian markets and gives community members the money to buy cultural staples. We've also worked with a group called Identity to hire their parents as 10 promotoras who can actually be leaders in connecting their own communities to much needed services. As organizations steeped in faith, as some of you are representatives of, I want to thank you for all the ways that you have joined us in caring for communities at this time. I also want to point out that you've stood with Manna before, especially at times when we've wanted to revolutionize our work. 6 years ago, when we experimented with choice for the first time, it was Colesville Presbyterian Church that hosted that experiment, and Silver Spring United Methodist that a few years later allowed us to replicate it. And the choice model thrived under their leadership. They were able to provide the type of hospitality that's a hallmark of the faith community and a genuine respect for all people that resulted in a level of community building around those food distributions that Manna could never have imagined, and we probably could never have produced on our own. Food is powerful, but food alone does not have the power to create this new normal that we all nodded when Jackie mentioned earlier. This is why Manna has been so focused on using the power of food to bring people together so that we can have conversations like this one that give voice to the fact that sharing food is necessary, but sharing food is not sufficient to achieving Manna's vision of food for all. 1,500 years ago, St. Augustine said, "Charity is no substitute for justice withheld." I concede that in this particular moment of crisis, our sights have to be on getting more food to more people. But I have to insist that our gaze cannot remain there. We need to lengthen and deepen our view so that we can see clearly to uproot those systems and policies that, if left intact, will keep our phone lines busy and those lines of cars long after the pandemic ends. I don't have the answers, but I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, and we will continue to do so. And I hope that you'll continue joining us to talk about it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenna and Kendra and Adam. So now what happens in Breaking Bread is that we have someone share their perspectives and then we react to them. Hopefully by now you've done eating. We're done the breaking of the bread and your mouths are not full and you have a chance to respond. I'm really delighted that we have, it looks like 46 people. So there is the opportunity just to take yourself off of mute and jump in. And if it gets too chaotic, then we'll use the chat function or something. But would anybody like to respond or clarify or add a different point of view?
Well, I mean, thank you so much, Jackie. And I think personally for me, I think I'm really excited to be part of this. And this is my first time at Breaking Bread. And so
Yeah, and Abby, tell folks who you are.
Definitely, yeah. Well, my name is Abby Fashasin. I'm a pastor and also the church administrator for Jesus House DC, a church downtown Silver Spring. Jesus House DC is a mission of the Redeemed Christian Church of God with about 5,000 parishes in all the continents, except Antarctica, of course. We have 400 parishes in the US, but basically North America. Of course, I've been with the church since its inception in 1995. And, we do a lot of work. We do a lot of missions. And I think personally, for me, I think it's, like I said initially, it's interesting to be part of this, to also learn and hopefully know more, probably learn more about the folks on the call, and hoping to also be able to bring a lot of things we've talked about to bear. I mean, I actually do international development work, which is what I do on my 9 to 5. I work, working with USAID, which is the basically arm of State Department that does a lot of work outside. We do a lot of work in economic growth and some of the things I think we talk about some of the things that happens there. I think it's interesting. I mean, I know what happens outside there, but I think learning how it happens within our community, and I want to commend all the speakers. I think, they've been right on point. And it was interesting when the Rabbi and Reverend Smith was speaking, what the scripture that came to mind was Matthew 25, when I think Jesus was talking to, and of course there was a reference to, when, I was sick, you visited me, when I was in prison, when I was hungry. And it was interesting. They said, I think in verse 37 of the scripture says, then the righteous will answer. And basically what that means is that, those who are right, those who are in right standing, will answer, look, when did I do this? And so it means everything we're doing, we're basically doing it for Christ, because that's the love that Christ shows, to be able to impact our community, to be able to help the needy. And so, some of the things that's been talked about, as we shared, I think for me personally, it's a time for me to learn, to sink in, and also to be able to engage as we move forward. We also, aside from what we've been doing in our community, we do a lot of work in the district, and also out of, we do a lot of work in the district. We've also adopted some shelter homes and all that. But I think, now that COVID-19 has happened, there's a lot also that we started to do, working with Manna Food and some other partners. But I think it's an opportunity for me to learn, to sink in, and to understand how we can engage our community, especially some of the work that Kingdom AME has been doing with Pastor Reverend Smith. I think it's really commendable. Also just to join. Yeah, I mean, just to join.
I'm so glad you introduced yourself and that you have made connections to what you've heard. And I think that is a really key takeaway, that how to engage our community. That's got to be part of the new normal, the new fairer normal. And with acts of charity like you all are doing, but also with that focus on justice. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Oh, Andrea, is that okay? Because, I always just love to talk. I am not a person of faith, but I am. So I think that, from my perspective, you help the community because that's what's expected of you in order to live here in a community. I love that you talked about justice, that both the rabbi and the pastor talked about justice, because I'm with Community Reach of Montgomery County, and I work with, our purpose is to help the vulnerable in Montgomery County and Rockville, and we partner with Manna in a number of ways, which I'm very proud of. But my belief is that all of us could have been in the same situation, and that the most important piece when we work with everybody, first of all, is to treat everybody with respect and understand that we are the same place. There are so many people who want to help because they think that it's expected of them. One of the things that I do is I work with volunteers, and I will never accept a volunteer who thinks that they are giving back and not getting anything out of it. I think that when we help others, it's a two-way street. We learn, we feel better, we get karma points, but we also learn a lot about what we have and what's really important in life, and how we can help the community become stronger. I don't know if any of that makes sense, and I'll shut up now because I could go on forever and make no sense.
You did make some good sense, and I appreciate you sharing your voice. Who else would like to share a voice? John is raising his hand. So John Ross, did you want to?
Yes, thank you. I'm John Ross. This is my first time. I'm a parishioner at St. John's Norwood Parish in Bethesda, Maryland. And I just wanted to thank everybody. This is really provocative. We have been involved in social justice issues, but when the pandemic came, I liked the way somebody termed it, that we were in a triage moment. So we were responding to the immediate needs. And we have a little men's ministry, and we thought kind of modestly, we would like to support, this is early on, our frontline workers. So we thought we'd buy a meal and send cards of appreciation to Suburban, the entire emergency shift at Suburban. So we thought that's about $600. Well, about, a couple months later, we're at $16,000 and rising. And a bunch of that has gone to Manna. I would just like to underscore Reverend Kendra's comments about abundance from scarcity. I had no idea of the outpouring, of how much people want to give, of the extraordinary things that we can all do together. I mean, it's just, we have a saying in our faith about the Holy Spirit, feeling the Holy Spirit's palpable presence as this was beginning to happen in our lives and around us. Well, we're facing now, and I'd love to hear people's comments on that because there's so much really wonderful thinking going on here. We're trying to begin to pivot from the triage moment of responding to open wounds to building sustainable strategic relationships and looking to as Jackie was saying, trying to think about the new normal, what that means, how we can be a part of that in a sustainable long-term way that really does get at the root cause. So we're looking at working with our government officials and advocacy on that level, but love to hear what people are doing on that front. Thank you.
Jack, I just wanted to jump in just real quick and share something else just around the justice front. So we know that many of the people that we are serving were already food insecure before COVID. So this COVID pandemic exacerbated the issue. I'm not sure what other people are seeing, but what we're seeing at our food distributions are a high percentage of people of color. And so with that, when I was in seminary, I had opportunity to kind of delve into some conversation around interlocking systems of oppression, and that food is what it looks like. That's how it looks, but you have all of these other systems, right, that are interlocked. You have race, you have ethnicity, you have class, you have sex. And so when you have all of these systems that are interlocked, the question and the tension is, how do you begin to address it? How do you begin to discuss it? And Jenna, I appreciate your comments around wanting to move towards justice. I'll still say that what we are doing is just. And so I hear what you're saying, that it's not necessarily where we can stay, but at the same time, you have to start where you are. So at Kingdom, while we have the food component going on, we also have a justice component going on that's dealing with advocacy, legislation. Our pastor recently was on this call called Justice Con with hundreds of other churches and other folks that were concerned about this just issue. But I think that if we don't begin to address some of the other issues, some of the other systems, the lack of employment, the lack of education, if we don't begin to discuss some of the mental health issues that are impacting our families, that they can get a job, but they not be able to keep a job, the single moms who make up 50%. And so, of course, in Montgomery County, their salary is not even sufficient, right, for them to have a sufficient living wage. And so my tension for us is how you do both and. Because I don't think we should do one and not do the other. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so for us, we're having discussion internally and would love to continue to work and serve with you all in how you do both and. Because for us, and while we understand that the large mass food distributions aren't the best way to go, it was an emergency response. And so we have to continue to do that. But at the same time, I also know that if I can help somebody gain a higher wage, if I can help somebody gain a certification, if I can help somebody gain a college degree, then it helps to unlock some of those systems of oppression that they're in. And so I would love to begin to hear what other folks are doing around those systems, and so that they can be more integrated and not siloed, right? So that this whole concept of food and the power of food is one part of a larger answer. So let me stop there, because again, I am a preacher and I will go in on you quickly.
Thank you.
Jackie?
So I will say that we did, Kendra just invited people to say more about how do we address these interlocking issues. John had requested if people had ideas about advocacy. Jenna, you're one of our guest speakers, so we want you to be able to respond, but also I see Anne was chatting with me. So Anne, would you like to unmute and let us know what you'd like to think? And also it looks like, Jenna, maybe you're just telling me Rosetta would like to speak. So we'll do Anne and then Reverend Robinson.
I just wanted to share, I've been privileged to work with Manna over the last several years. I am a strategic communications consultant, and I've worked in various capacities with Manna and with its community food rescue program, but never as intimately as I have over the last 6 weeks or so since COVID started, and seeing the organization understanding more deeply how Manna is making the connections, how food is justice, but justice requires more, has been really inspiring. I know we're talking about systems, and that's usually, the clients I have are all about systems change and everything, but I just wanted to say that one of the things that's been a struggle for me, and maybe for others on an individual, or if you're not running a big organization, is how can we impact change during this time? And I will say that, in the aftermath of the George Floyd killings, and just, seeing Manna live, thinking about the interconnections between racism and how to be an anti-racist organization and an ally. And, my family was doing a lot of talking, and my small team of staff were doing a lot of talking. And one day I was talking with Jackie about a project that we needed to hire a contractor for to help Manna. And Jackie was like, great, find somebody in your network, and I'm sure you have people in the community, and you're looking at, diverse people of color, and, looking at a diverse range of people. I'm like, no, I have so few people in my network of professionals who I can call on to help me, who represent the diversity of our community. And that was sort of a wake-up call to me that after decades of doing work with organizations that are advancing social justice, there was this big gap in my own approach. And it was like, okay, here's something very, very concrete and actionable that I can do to make these connections between social justice and our community, which is expand my network of people who I know do really good work, who I can help provide opportunities to or hire to do work, because you know, at the end, it's opportunity. It's about opportunity and fair access and just access to, you know, to opportunity. So I just wanted to share that by way of appreciation for what I've learned in working for Manna, and you know, one of the kind of the ways, as I think we all struggle with, how do we improve things? There are big systems things, and then there are, you know, obviously very, you know, personal or practical things that we can do as well.
Thank you for sharing that story, Anne, and thank you for being part, you know, being interested in doing both the individual and the institutional and the systemic work. And so that's a great example of how we all need to journey, and being on this call is part of that journey. So, so Elizabeth, I see you've raised your hand. Thank you. You'll be next after Dr. Rosetta Robinson. And Reverend Robinson, please get started.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And I want to apologize that the video is not so great, but I really appreciate the opportunity. I know, Angie, you have diligently invited me to these for many, many times and years, and this is the first one I've actually been able to join. So, and it has been a blessing. I appreciate all of the reflection and meditation that we've heard from the speakers. And one of the things that I'm mindful now, I remember when I first joined Interfaith Works 25 years ago, and at that time learning that the then community ministry was involved in helping to start Manna. And I remember seeing some of the Manna execs who would come to the office, and we always knew that that there were needs that were always intersecting, and that we were all going to have to work together to address them, because sometimes not one organization can do it. Some need to focus, some need to expand. But as I listened to the reflections from all three of the speakers, which noted justice, one thing that I think is critical for all of us is that we talk about justice, and we're always talking about it where we see it in some other sector. But we also have to start thinking about it. What are the unjust systems and even practices that we practice within our own organizations, our sphere of influences, and our unjust perceptions about the people we serve? So it begins there. And then that internal evaluation assessment, which can be very, very tough and challenging, it can help us move forward. One of the things that we do realize too, and I'm thankful for Manna and other organizations that are trying to have this atmosphere of diversity, so that for people who are not normally in diverse environments, they can come together. And so they began to see people who are not like themselves or not involved at their same level. And then that helps to open up a whole new dialogue and opportunity for interaction that would not exist anyplace else. So I know that I too, being a preacher, I could go on and on, especially around this topic of justice, because sometimes we talk about it too much in the abstract. But I want to start thinking about, what is the injustice that I am participating in every single day, the programs I do, the interactions I have, the conversations I have with people. And I think that's important. And I think I'll just stop there. Thank you again, Jackie. Thank you, Angie. I appreciate being here today.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Robinson. And I also just want to acknowledge, you may not have been to an actual Breaking Bread, but our commitment to the East County was shaped by the work that we did together with Impact and Interfaith.
That's
work.
right.
So glad to have you with us today, and thank you for those points, which I think you're getting an amen or two in the chat box. I do recognize that Elizabeth wanted to talk, and so Elizabeth, what would you like to say?
Sure. I didn't really have anything to add, but I was hoping that Jenna could speak just for a sentence or two about the new program with identity and the promonturas. I didn't recognize that word. Could you explain to me what that work is all about?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And I'm Elizabeth, you seem so formal. That's my neighbor, Beth. Good to see you, Beth. Go for it, Jenna.
Well, thank you, Beth. So what I was mentioning with identity in particular is actually going on with 6 different organizations that we're working with now. And the idea is that we as an institution can probably never be as embedded in a community as we would like to or need to be to truly understand the needs of that community and to be a trusted resource to every community. So one thing that COVID definitely magnified, which is something we knew beforehand, like with so many things, is that many groups who may have been experiencing food insecurity in a greater degree for the first time were not comfortable reaching out for help, especially with food, largely because of cultural stigma or certainly immigration status, and the fear around that was creating an issue. So for lots of different reasons, people are not necessarily feeling comfortable reaching out to us as an institution, but they would be willing to work with somebody that they know, a neighbor, right, a trusted community leader. So our task with these partnerships was, our goal with these partnerships is to give funds and support to these community organizations so that they can be the connectors, so they can help their community members get food access from us. So we've got groups that primarily represent African American, African immigrants, and Latinx families. Identity is one of them, and they work with a group of Latinx parents generally, and they were able to, with funding that we received, we passed along to them, they were able to hire 10, I use the term promotora, which is a community health worker, a community outreach worker. And so they've been trained on our referral system, and so that they can actually connect people in their own community. Thanks for asking about it.
Yeah, thank you. That's quite a web of connections. Really neat to hear about it.
I want to recognize there's been a lot of good chat happening in the chat box relative to some of the things that you've said, Jenna. Is there anything you want to amplify for the whole group? Because we only have about 5 minutes left, and I want to also check and see if anybody else has something to share.
Sure. Well, what I put in the chat, I think, connects well to what Dr. Robinson said about unjust perceptions about the people we serve. This is something that I think about a lot, which is the language that we use to communicate the work that we do and the people that we work with in different capacities. And one thing I hear often and heard when I was growing up in the Catholic Church, this concept of the needy, the poor, the vulnerable. And I was saying in the chat, or posing the question of what other people think about that language, because to me, language creates perception and then creates actions from those perceptions. And if we're not starting with just language, then very likely the activity or the action that follows will be unjust as well. And I think there was some chatting about how people generally seem to agree that the language of people first, so people who are experiencing food insecurity, would be potentially a more just type of language. And I think the only other thing I wanted to mention, I was about to put in the chat box, was this idea that Reverend Kendra brought up, or this quandary of how do we do both? Knowing that we recognize that the systems need to change, but we also know that people need help right now. And so we can't just drop one and just to focus on the other. We need to do both. And one concept that was presented to me at a conference some time ago was this 51% rule, that if we were able to give 51% of our resources and our time and our energy towards the systemic work, we could still give 49% of our time to solving the immediate needs that people have. But then we would be really intentionally pursuing those systemic fixes. Because I think that left organic to be organic, we do tend to provide more energy and resources to the immediate need, I think in part because it's more tangible, it's easier to see, it tugs at our heartstrings in a way that talking about policy doesn't necessarily provoke all that emotional response. So I know that's just one concept. Certainly that question could be answered in lots of different ways. So, but I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Any last thoughts from participants, people who haven't spoken yet?
Yeah, I just, the word that just keeps coming to mind. My name is Victor Taylor. I'm a member of Kingdom Fellowship. I've been serving with Reverend Smith during this time of the COVID and everything. And just the word that just comes to mind, you know, with all the conversation for me is just the word hope. And I think that's, and I don't know if it's been said already, but for me, that's what this screams, because I just think about, you know, in that aspect that Reverend Smith brought up as well when it comes to mental health and so many of the situations that people were facing even before the COVID, that when we come into these communities, and even the people who aren't in need of help at that time, they're so much encouraged and inspired by what they see happening. And when I see that, it to me, it makes it even so much greater that it's not just about the food, but it's about the message of hope that's being communicated. So that was just my little bit.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Victor, because actually that's a wonderful reflection to end on before I turn it back over to Angie, because, you know, as the rabbi said, Manna is in a way a Jewish organization, but it's also a Christian organization. It's an Islamic organization, and it's also a secular organization, because what ties all those groups and others that I haven't named is hope, right? Because we are focused on people, and we want to be hopeful for people, and through our efforts. So thank you for ending with that, Victor, that you are leaving this conversation with a sense of hope. And thanks to everybody who piped in, and certainly, of course, thanks to Reverend Kendra and Rabbi Adam and Jenna. And so, Angie, I would like to give it back to you as you help us continue the ritual of breaking bread, and what's next for us.
All right. Looking forward over the next 30 days is what's next. This has really been a wonderful conversation, and I'm feeling lots of inspiration from everything that you have shared, and I think that you are too, from the comments that I've seen in the chat and the comments that you've been making. So this is the time where we start to think about what we want to do as we go forward, and we look at it in terms of a 30-day span of time, because we'll be coming back together again next month. And so what is it that we can do in the next 30 days to get into some of these ideas more deeply? So is there something that you've been inspired to take a closer look at today, or have you become more in touch with some passion that has already been inside you, and today is the day you think, yeah, I really want to go further into that? So our closing question is always, what are you willing to do in the next month to create new solutions or explore the underlying causes of hunger and food insecurity in Montgomery County? And this doesn't mean going out and creating a new organization in the next month or anything like that. It doesn't have to be something huge. It's one step towards something huge, and taking that step right now. So I just open it up to all of you again to jump in and share that there's something that you want to do, an action you want to take, or something that you want to learn more about. So I'll just open that up for your input right now. And you can share it with us, and we'll be happy to support you in following through with that. So,
Angie, can I kick that off?
Sure.
Something that it's been on our heart for a while. So our church, pre-COVID, meets at in a middle school, Lakelands Park Middle School. Only God knows when that will happen again. It doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon, so everything's gone to online. But prior to it, we were starting an initiative with the wonderful principal who just retired, Deborah Higdon. There's a new principal I haven't personally met yet, Ruth Lopez, I believe is her name. And so what we were working on, we've partnered with the school various times throughout the year to help partner with the counseling department to address some of the food vulnerabilities with or insecurities with some of the families. There's several homeless, or actually I think the term that they're using is families that were transitioning or in transition. And now obviously that situation has changed radically. So what we were beginning to do was to create like a food pantry, a food closet, kind of a mini Manna Food Center, if you will, in the office there at the middle school. And the counseling department there said every single day students came into the office hungry, not traditional, teenagers who really have enough, but they're just always hungry, but kids who really don't have enough food in their home. Now, this is obviously not, touching on any real long-term solution, but we feel like the relationship with the school. So here's my final thought on it, kind of my encouragement. Number one, I'm going to be reaching out and trying to at least have a virtual conversation with the new principal, following up with the guidance counselors. We've already been providing gift cards and food and doing things over the course of the last few months with them. But we're going to see what it might look like moving forward to really help provide a more, sustainable kind of approach to providing food to those who need it. But hopefully it'll be a long-term relationship which will instill trust in the community with our church and the faith community. And so anyway, my thought is this, that those that are in the faith community here, if you aren't already doing it, to really kind of adopt locally your community. So whether it's an elementary school, what we'd like to see happen is in the whole Quince Orchard cluster, every elementary school, the middle school and the high school, to, no kids should be hungry. I know we're all here because we believe that type of thing. So that's one thing that we are doing to address it. And I'll put a period there.
That's great. Thank you. The community needs all sorts of solutions, short-term, mid-term, long-term, and this is an excellent way to support the students at that school. Thank you. Who else would like to share something that they're willing to take on over the next month? Hi, Anne Marie.
Hi, Angie. How are you?
Good. Glad to see you.
You too. So I apologize because this is not a fully formed thought yet. It's been percolating for a few days, and this just kind of got me thinking again. And I'm thinking about Band-Aids, and I feel like so much, back to what Jenna's talking about, thinking about crisis situations and, prepping though for the future. And I feel like there's so many things that, pre-COVID, we were already in Band-Aid stages, and COVID is just kind of showing that how ill-equipped then those systems are. If all we're doing is, putting patchworks and never really addressing the root problems. And there was an article which is going to seem not connected, but was connected for me, about creating a carless New York. And I think about all of these, we spend so much attention thinking on ways to, lower car emissions or lower traffic congestion or lower all these things for communities that don't even benefit, from those things. Like if you live in Manhattan, chances are you don't own a car. And so how much waste goes into that line of thinking, you know, as opposed to thinking about what could we do to make the car itself unnecessary. So I'm just trying to think about those things in my life where what control do I have now over choices that I make that, you know, are just kind of perpetuating the Band-Aids as opposed to, you know, really changing the situation. And I don't know what those are right now. And I don't know what those are working full time with 2 kids at home who I don't know where they're going in the foreseeable future. But it is just something that I'm trying to, you know, keep going in there and keep thinking about moving forward.
That's great. Thank you. I'm learning the clap now. So Jenna's clapping. Bill, I can't see everybody at one time. So if you're waving your hand, I'm not necessarily certain, but feel free to unmute and jump in and share any ideas that you have.
Hi, this is Claudette. Good afternoon, everyone. As I've been listening, there are a couple of things that come to my mind. And I've been asking myself, first of all, the real meaning of connect, commit, change. And then I take it backwards, change, because of your connection to your commitment. And real simple, the 5 W's and an H: who, what, when, where, why, how. So when you give thought to just thinking about that, all of us have something within us, or thoughts or expressions or things that we want to do, may not be able to do, but how can we contribute based on our connection, commitment, and change, wanting to connect, wanting to commit, wanting to change. And who will benefit? Who, what, when, where, how.
Thank you, Claudette. We appreciate that very much. I think that Mitchell and Beth may be raising their hands, interested in saying something. Mitchell?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, Angie, first, thank you for leading us. I'm the current board chair at Manna, so I appreciate what everybody has been saying. But, you know, I've been hearing the words justice and systems, and, you know, those are all big ticket items when it comes to trying to break the cycle of poverty that affects people not only of color, but people throughout Montgomery County and our country. And trying to figure out, you know, what can I do for the next 30 days, even though I try to do it every day. But, you know, one thing is people in power, people in leadership have their hands on the levers. A lot of these systems were created, you know, during eras where historically racism was considered the normal, the Jim Crow era. Some of our federal agencies still have things on the books that prevent people from moving up. So I think for the next 30 days, I'm really going to concentrate on who I'm going to vote for. You know, I've been going through this song that Hamilton, you know, I'm not going to throw away my shot. Well, I don't want to throw away my vote. So I'm going to pay attention to who is speaking out and who is going to be fighting the system from the inside and supporting them and doing whatever I can locally.
It's a great reminder. Thank you. And thanks for Mitchell's such a big supporter of Manna and does so much. So we're so fortunate to have him leading our board. Thank you. And Beth, I think we are going to have to end with you. Thank you. Let's hear what you wanted to share. Did I get that wrong, Beth? Did you want to share a commitment? All right. Kelly, I see that you unmuted. Did you want to share something?
Yes, I was thinking, I always like to think of what direct action I can take as an individual. And I want to experiment and see if I can keep up the habit of just buying an extra bag at the store if I go to the store and giving it to some of the people that I see right out here on the streets that I know are in need. Or if I go to a restaurant, getting a gift card. My parents used to say, if you don't have the money to tip, you don't have the money to eat out. So I'm asking myself, if I can tell myself, if I don't have the money to give to somebody else, then I don't have enough money to do this thing for myself. Just a complete share. So I'm going to play around with that, and I'll let you all know how it goes. And just in terms of how we can be more inclusive of all people, I will add, it is wonderful that we're also accomplished and have done so many things, and it can, in my view, have a chilling effect on people's willingness to share when we begin with not just who we are and the merits of whatever it is that we're going to say, but what we've done and how great we are. And we're all great, I get that. But I'll just say that if a person is having a lived experience of hunger, they may not have all of those resume credentials, and those resume credentials can be kind of intimidating. So I'm throwing that out for the community to think about. Thanks.
Thank you. We're coming up on our last minute, so I want to honor the time and end on time with an invitation to join us again next month. We do this every month on the third Wednesday, and so next month that will be on August 19th. And if you didn't make a commitment out loud today, and tomorrow you think of something that you want to do, come back next month and tell us how it went. And everybody who did share a commitment, we'll hope that you will come back and let us know what your update is, or you can email it to us if you're not able to make it, and we can share it for you. But this has been really great, and I thank you so much for taking this time out to join us and sharing from your hearts. It really means a lot, and it takes all of us to create change. So we're doing well because we have some really great people joining us in this mission today. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you again next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.